welcome back to Bald Don't Lie. I am your bald host, Louis Zatzman, joined by my subordinate, my guest today, Samson Folk.
Yes.
We are here to discuss the Raptors. I wanted to start actually with your recent piece. You talked about defense. Before we dive in, please comment, like, subscribe.
Nice.
Before we dive in, Samson.
Yep.
So you wrote this big piece about their defense, which is currently fourth now, third. Where are they?
Well, I keep asking me the question, and I'll go look up where they are.
Okay. I was curious when you started this piece. You have 4 head coaches, I believe. JJ Redick, the coach of the Grizzlies. You have Mike Brown, obviously Darko.
You dodged that very deftly. The coach of the Grizzlies. He says you don't want to say Thomas.
There's no need
to
bring up. I was curious. I want a navel gaze to just right at the top. Tell me about writing the piece.
Okay, so by the way, the Raptors fell all the way to 7th. And part of it was because at the time of the piece, they were at 111.7, which was 0.1 above the Spurs and the Heat, and who were tied at 111.8. And Minnesota is very close there. The Rockets are very close there. And there is a huge jumble between 10 and 5. And the Raptors are currently stuck in the middle of that jumble. But they can ascend out of it. We'll see. Somebody said 7th, as if like, damn. Unless I have a qualifier here that's not making sense. But yeah, so they're 7th. Writing the piece was because I thought it was extremely interesting that prior to the season, everything they said, they're like, we don't care. They added Brandon Ingram, by the way, this team, and then said that they don't care about offense. It was Coach Carter saying, what do we want to do? Run. Guess what we want to do on offense? Run. And they hardly talked about anything of that. They said, we want to be defense first. We want to do all that, which is bearing fruit. However, they're doing it in a different way than they preached. And it's not all the way different, but I thought it was incredibly interesting that they did everything they said they wanted to do to open the season and were 29th in the NBA in defense. And it was terrible. It was horrible. And then they peeled back a bunch of different things, fine-tuned others, and now halfway through the season, a very meaningful chunk of basketball, they have been in the top 10 for a very long time now. And with a team that is not laden with what people think is a bunch of defensive talent. This is not the 2019-20 Raptors who could have had like 4 different guys grace an all-defense team. This is a team that very aggressively has only one option for an all-defense nomination. And I thought that was interesting. And I think that makes you want to take a look at what the coach is asking them to do and what the buy-in looks like. So that's why. And then they kept being up and down. So I just had to sit on the piece and keep asking forever. And then I finally got to write it. So there we go.
Well, it turned out great. I was curious. You have always been, it's about the players, not the coach, philosophy guy. I've heard you say that 1,000 times to me publicly. And then this piece comes along that, in my mind, challenges that a little bit. Because in your own words, there's one player driving this. And there's buy-in and there's schematics. Look, Scotty Barnes is an unbelievable defender. I don't think the Raptors have the defensive talent that's close to 4th, 7th, wherever in the league. So did writing this piece and understanding Toronto's defense, and especially the change after those first few games, did it make you change, to any extent, your philosophy about where credit is due to the coach?
Not really. It did, it deserves consideration for sure. And defense historically is a little bit more like having a leader of men as a coach, or having a guy who has a really clear and concise idea of what he wants his team to enact. Really, that clarity helps a bunch. And the Raptors getting to practice and work on that is good. I think it reflects really well of the team, because we're going to get into what they do defensively. And I really do think it reflects well of the team in that they enact what, that they play that style. It's not easy. It's actually very difficult. And, somebody just commented It's probably a Knicks fan, says RJ Barrett is a terrible defender. I don't care about the rim pressure. When you are left-hand dominant, can't make free throws, and struggle processing court. RJ is not a terrible defender. And that's also part of the answer here, is that the Raptors, the people who were assumed to be terrible defensively, are not as bad as people think. And some of the guys who Scotty had no buzz as an all-defense candidate coming into this season in the wider conversation. You and I, of course, are like, he should be a shoo-in, and he probably will be if he plays this way. And there's guys like CMB who are playing much better than expected. Like his defense, he's really, over the past however many games, has been like the biggest impact defender, is in the way he's cleaned the glass, create extra possessions, get steals, deflections. And then guys like Quickly, he's not pressing very often anymore. He's been pretty functional in the half court defensively. Grady, despite obviously struggling at a great many things, I have a little piece on him. He plays the exact style the Raptors want to play. All the indicators are that when Grady's on the court, the Raptors, the types of shots they take, how often they play in transition, their points per possession, their defense, the steals, he's been terrible shooting the ball. We're all waiting on what that looks like. But the Raptors play a style. It's the buy-in, it's the cohesion from the whole roster. And I think we'll get into some of the quotes, but Darko deserves a lot of credit. And I'm glad that he gets it in the piece.
Do you think they'll need to play differently when they have an enormous...
Just for listeners, Lewis is paused right now, and we're waiting for him to come back into the fold. But I will say, there's some people in chat. Neil B says, who is who? I'm Samson Folk. Lewis is Louis Zatzman. AISM says, if you played basketball, you know how fatiguing driving through contact the way RJ does is. So it's actually more impressive that he can give the defensive effort he does. RJ, his off-ball defense is like not always as attentive as you want. His on-ball defense, he's not like a super strong stopper, but he's not being hunted, I don't find. Like, he gets put in actions. Anyway, Lewis, if you can ask me that question again.
Yeah, you didn't really talk about Poeltl, which makes sense. He hasn't really been playing this season. Mm-hmm. Do you think they'll need to play differently in terms of all that stunting and overloading with Poeltl in the lineup? Or if they do want to play the same way, will they need a different center?
That's a good question. I think that they can play roughly this style with Poeltl. And even with Poeltl in the lineup, they still load up a bunch. In the piece, I cite the synergy stats that say like the Raptors load up, and loading up is like pack line defense. Like you pinch in on the corners, you load up at the elbows, you're dissuading drives, and the Raptors stunt a bunch as well. Most people know what stunting is, and they trap all the time. So they're putting pressure on ball handlers. What all this says is they want you to pick up the ball earlier. And so picking up the ball earlier means that guys like CMB at 6'7", roughly, Scotty at 6'9", these guys can track and be better guarding at the rim when guys pick up their dribble from farther away. They're more overextended trying to finish. They're easier to track and to match steps with as a rim defender. And you can play the middle between the ball handler and rim runners easier. You don't have to do as much of that with Poeltl there, but Poeltl's rim defense has fallen off a cliff from where it was when he was like a very in vogue, wow defender with the Spurs. And Poeltl, I think most of his value is the massive boost he gives to defensive rebounding. And I think at this point, Poeltl is more of a boost offensively than defensively, even though, and you and I were talking about this prior, that some of the numbers and like catch-alls, like there was one that was saying that Poeltl is a top 10 defender in the NBA per impact, which to me is ridiculous. But Poeltl, he really helps them rebound, and he helps them on offense, which means they play with a set defense more often. But they still want to press. They still want to do that kind of stuff because Poeltl is not a defensive stopper like that. And you can just keep them back there. They've been really good at hiding players. They've been good at, and that's what CMB and Scotty really facilitate, to jump out and take over matchups.
Peel switching I think is such a cool thing that's taken over the league. Like to turn Grady Dick from hide him in the corner to we're actually going to crank up our steals by virtue of hiding. Really cool technical thing. And a game-saving block from Poeltl on Pascal Siakam. He hasn't really played this year. A couple cool moments.
Before you move on, I'll read the quotes that I got on peel switching. And so so I've obviously diagrammed this on the podcast before, but peel switching is a live ball switch, which used to be a huge no-no. But basically the moment you start getting beat, you run away from your man to the corner most often, and the corner man starts stepping into the driving lane. And what this does is it creates a huge difference in the types of reads that on-ball players have to make. When I talked to JJ Redick about this, and I can read his quote right here, JJ says it's a good tool to have in the box. It's really important, particularly with the amount of closeouts that happen in the NBA. It's inevitable that your defense is going to get broken down. There's base shell principles, there's nexting or peeling. And he would go on to tell me that the first time they saw it that season, Phoenix was running peel concepts, and it actually really screwed with how Luka was reading the defense. And Darko said, quote, I think it's paramount for a simple reason. The way we want to switch on some of those drives with our peel defense, the main goal is not having two players on the ball. Once you put two players on the ball against elite players, they just pick you apart. They're elite at finding the best options there. So the main thing there with peeling is keeping bodies on bodies, covering for each other. And it's easier said than done to play that way. You have to be really playing hard. Most of the nights we do play that way. That is peel switching.
It's funny. I thought that the Raptors defense with OG Anunoby, Pascal Siakam, Fred VanVleet, Scotty Barnes could have been better. They sacrificed defense intentionally to try to crank up their transition offense. I think there are a lot of things that have come into vogue recently that that team could have really, really thrived using those tools.
They were doing everything. You and I covered it to death when it was, we wrote a lot about those in vogue things that the Raptors were doing, and none of it came to fruition with that team, and all of it came to fruition elsewhere in the league, which is a hell of a thing.
Okay, Jamal Shead. It's a safe space. It's just you and me. No one's gonna yell at you. Come on, no one's gonna yell at you.
I've been so Jamal positive this year. I know you listen to the podcast. This is a Jamal positive podcast.
It's true. You and Trey actually, I think, picked up really nicely on when his defense really started cranking up. But I haven't heard you guys follow up on it, and I wanted to, especially given that piece. How do you feel about his guard defense these days? And do you think he really is a big motivator for the team defense recently?
He is. He's a big motivator. And I give credit. Jamal Shead is a much better defender than Grady. Okay, but they are asked to do similar things in half court defense. They're both supposed to pursue the ball almost to half court. They're both supposed to play off the ball when they are and try and create turnovers. And they're both supposed to be very aggressive in how they guard guys and when moving off of them. Shead is far superior, but that intentionality is there. And what really helps that intentionality is playing with guys like CMB and Scotty who recover for them. And Jamal Shead, when he was unbelievable in Houston, when they would run the line of scrimmage defense under Kellen Sampson, their forwards were unbelievable at helping their guards who were overextended on purpose. And Jamal, he's not playing with Kelly Olynyk anymore. He's playing less with Jakob Poeltl. He's playing more. Plays with Sandro, but Sandro steps out. And Sandro's not elite at stepping out, but he does step out. He plays with these guys who are helping maintain a similar play style to what Jamal was doing. Early on in the season, when Jamal is playing Cole Anthony 94 feet and Jakob can't step up and do it, it's toast. It's burnt.
Yeah.
But I think it's been really great. And I wrote it in the piece. His defense on Steph Curry was sublime. And of course it helped that Scotty was able to step out on, Steph as well too. But Jamal gave 29 minutes of everything he could. He was a plus 34 in that game, and they would not have been able to exact that type of defense on the Warriors, which moved the ball out of Steph's hands and into turnover-prone players and fueled their comeback. He's been essential in, I guess, embodying how they want to play, and he's one of the most important players in doing so.
He can have a really nice career. Man, I'm so excited about how Jamal Shead's carried himself, just the way the team looks at him, what he's found as a passer, just really impressive year and a half so far from him.
Well, you did a big piece on him last year. How do you feel? And you were talking about like his journey to becoming the defender he wanted to be and his journey as a player. You and I both have a piece like that from one-on-ones with him. Mine more offense, yours more defense, I think. How do you feel about where he's at?
He hit the rookie wall hard last year, for a long period. He was tired for a lot of the year, and he didn't adjust to the physicality and to the whistle, and he was very much a reactive player, which is not his strength at all. If he is going to be a successful defender, it has to be proactive, and he doesn't seem nearly as tired this year. His legs are there. He's clearly put work on into his body, like physically, and he's getting a better whistle. I think he's allowed to exert more physicality than he was last season. And I think all that is combined to not in a way change his numbers, but it just means he's able to dictate terms defensively in a way that he wasn't. And you're seeing him, those little things really pop up in a way where a possession would just end with a whistle last year. It's like, oh, that sucks. Now you 4 fouls, hit the bench. This year, he is able to really, win on the margins in a bunch of small ways. He can come out of the pack with a rebound. He really good at fighting for loose balls. He is honestly, like, the Raptors have a bunch of little things kings on the team right now. Scotty Barnes is getting phenomenal at that stuff. Colin Murray-Boyle is exceptional. Jamal Shead. And I think those things really add up in the 48 minutes of a game, especially when you have multiple players like that. Really happy with where he is right now. And honestly, I mean, I said it last time we chatted. This is our first time 2026 podcasting. I thought his defense would come around over the long term. I thought he'd be a really positive defender. And yeah, I still believe that. And I think there's a lot to point towards him being quite an impressive defender. It's hard to be a good guard defender when you're young. Like, Cason Wallace is not the rule. It's really, really hard for guards to find, their way into those moments because you have to make so many choices. It's even harder than offense, especially as a guard. There's so many moments where you have to say, oh, I need to split this gap here. I'm pre-switching there. I need to crack. It's like every second you're like, I need to decide which way I'm leaning, which way I'm going. And clearly he's getting better at it. He's getting a lot better.
He's been really fun to watch. He's still like a 49% true shooting player. If he wants to ascend, like right now, he has such a unique role in the NBA and on the Raptors. If he wants to ascend to a guy who is impervious to the context of a team, the offense stuff has to come around. But even then, I think, yes, he has, because again, it's 49% true shooting. That's just like no team can swallow that, basically. But he does such a good job of playing according to the lineups he's in that it makes you wonder, like, could he just do that in a bunch of different places? Is he a guy who could constantly comport himself and make things work? Before we talk about another guy who's comported himself completely and another guy who's comported himself partly in Brandon and RJ, is there anything else on the defense?
Excuse me. Before we talk about that, is there anything else on the defense? No. Honestly, yeah, I really loved your piece. One of the best we've had on the site all year. I was really excited for it. And yeah, super fun to chat about. So thank you for doing that. No, let's move on. You know what I've decided as the host? It's time to move on.
Okay, thank you. Before we get on to the next topic, I will do our ad read. It is the Ball Don't Lie, but we're on the Pull Up Tray feed. And it is, of course, presented by Coors Light. Basketball can be stressful, especially if you're being guarded by Jamal Shead and he's being proactive. But your choice of beer, it doesn't have to be. Coors Light delivers mountain cold refreshment. When the mountain turns blue, the beer is as cold and refreshing as the Rockies. Coors Light is cold lagered, cold filtered, and cold certified for a smoother finish. Make sure to celebrate responsibly, man. And of course, you must be legal drinking age to imbibe to take part. Louis, any thoughts on Coors Light before we talk about RJ and Brandon Ingram?
No, let's talk about RJ and Brandon Ingram.
Hell yeah, Coors Light. I love the comments and the feedback from people buying Coors Light in the comments. Thank you, everybody. RJ Barrett and Brandon Ingram. I got DM'd. So Matt Moore of Hardwood Paroxysm of the Action Network, he suggested that RJ is far better than Brandon Ingram. He did the stat head comparisons of RJ, Brandon, and Scotty, and he was like, okay, RJ's far better. And so I got asked by a listener, like, what do you think of this? And I said, Louis and I will talk about this. And then RJ got injured, and we don't have any info on RJ being injured, but, you know, it's a sprained ankle. We'll see what happens. We're going to talk about it. Brandon, RJ, this is not like a comparison is the thief of joy. We're going to discuss this, I think, in a way where we're highlighting how they each affect the Raptors, because they have very different effects on what happens on the court when they're there. What is your first blush? You're the host. I'll shut up. Go ahead.
My instinct, thank you, by the way, my instinct is actually exactly what it was a few years ago, where context helps RJ Barrett more than anyone else on the team. And I think we see that a lot with his on-off numbers, which really push his single number metrics, right? EPM, BPM force.
Who cares about single number metrics?
Well, Matt Moore, that's what drives the conversation, right? That's why we're talking about this. A lot of people watch not a lot of Raptors and look at some numbers and then start conversations based on those. It is
you are taking it to Rob Mahoney and Matt Moore. You're punching up.
No, I love Rob Mahoney. Rob Mahoney is. Let me get ahead of this. Look, Linda, listen. Linda, look, listen, Linda. Rob Mahoney speaks about basketball with such fluidity and grace, which, as you know, is more important to me, I think, than understanding basketball. Yeah. And I think he actually understands basketball exceptionally as well. I'm a huge fan of his. And that's the only reason that I would name him as someone I'm disagreeing with. I would never name someone that I don't respect a lot. So anyway, let's get back to the topic at hand.
Yep.
Yeah, so I think RJ Barrett being the only guy who drives the ball is hugely important. And it does make for some funky numbers, right? So there's one thing I wanted to hit right off at the top, and I wanted to ask you about it. Brandon Ingram was brought in to solve the half-court offense, which was atrocious last year, year before that, and on and on. And if you look at the on-off first shot half-court offense, right? Don't take offensive rebounds out of it, just points per play, first shot, half-court. The best on-off mark there is RJ Barrett, 11.4 points per 100 possessions better. Brandon Ingram is negative 1.2, so more or less neutral. Why does RJ Barrett have such an enormous impact on that first shot half-court offense? And why are we not seeing Brandon Ingram, who I think is playing quite well this year, have, I think, the number that he was brought in to shift show up in his numbers?
The big thing, I think, is that the Raptors offense facilitates shots that are like in RJ's wheelhouse, for one. And two, RJ has changed his wheelhouse. RJ has changed a lot as a player. You wrote like a great piece about this. He has adapted. If you go look at his synergy, which I know isn't publicly available, but they have all of the play types he scores out of. He's borderline elite at scoring out of like all of his high volume play types. And it's because he has changed the way he plays. He dribbles less. He attacks differently. He's a smarter passer. He's a more accomplished shot maker at the rim and as a contested three-point shooter. He's just a guy who has taken everything in stride. He cuts really well. He and Darko and everybody, Brandon, they talk about this, is that, this RJ just shows up and helps you. It's what he does. And of course, if you want to drive efficient offense, you need paint touches, you need rim attempts, and you need to pass out of those paint touches and rim attempts to create great looks for others. And RJ Barrett, he also plays a lot in transition. So he's just like streamlining everything. Yosef says he's just that guy. RJ is. He streamlines his game. Brandon on these Raptors, I think, has not streamlined his game at all. I think his job is really tough. I do think, though, with a little bit more stick-to-itiveness from Brandon, and I think far more ingenuity required from the Raptors in how they use him, Brandon should be a guy who that efficiency starts to creep up. But his job is really hard. His first shot is not RJ Barrett in transition. It's not RJ Barrett on a handoff where he's coming downhill with momentum. Brandon Ingram is catching the ball coming uphill off a pin down from Emmanuel Quickly, facing a guy and a loaded defense and trying to make something happen there. It's just, they're two completely different asks, and this manifests in all of their numbers down the line.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Brandon Ingram could do more with that job. The live ball passing has been, pretty poor, especially. But it is very different. And RJ Barrett, if he was asked to create in the middle of the floor like that, I mean, it wouldn't work for him. That's just not his game. A lot of those shots turn into those up fake leaning floaters that he has made in the last two games, but aren't really particularly good looks. Really happy with RJ's offense against Boston. I know that the efficiency wasn't there. He was missing shots, but man, he moves the chains like as a screener, as a handler, as a cutter. Really happy about his malleability. And I think that shows up. Not a lot of malleable players on the Raptors. Not a lot of guys who can toggle between roles in an individual possession. RJ Barrett can do that. And you really see the offense thrive when he goes from, an off-ball screener to an on-ball screener to a cutter. It's like, that's tough for defenses to track. He is a strong dude. And when he's flowing between actions like that, really, really impressive results.
So obviously Brandon is billed as, and I think functionally, a more talented offensive player. The whole thing about Brandon Ingram is that people are like, he's Kevin Durant light. To be the light version of Kevin Durant communicates that you are unbelievably talented at a large size. And that is, I think, an accurate description of Brandon Ingram. Where does it, because RJ scores a close amount of similar points per game. He has a better assist to turnover ratio. They create a similar amount of assists, and he's more efficient. Where does it, Brandon Ingram's job is really hard. RJ's job, we see it as easier. How much of this is in Brandon's control, do you think, to make his own job easier by making different decisions on the floor? Because yes, RJ is a guy who has gotten better at things, but also his decision-making has gotten better to allow his game to breathe better. Where do you think that those things intersect?
Well, RJ Barrett gets to play with Brandon Ingram. Brandon Ingram doesn't. I know that that's a truism, but I do wonder how impressive Brandon Ingram would be if he was playing alongside, Kevin Durant, for example. How malleable would he be?
This was just quickly Caitlin's thing when we talked about it before the season of how Brandon had trouble playing on Team USA alongside all the other, incredibly talented players. That was why, and I think some people saw that and worried about how he would adapt.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think to his credit, he's actually fit into some lineups that do play differently. Yes, he's played really well with 4 bench players. I think when he's played alongside like Jamal, Grady, Sandro, it's been pretty impressive. His ability to just like make shots and play fast and like not yuck the young guys yum. And Andy, I actually thought he and Zion weren't wonderful together. I thought he played really well with Trey Murphy, and not at all with Zion. That team, I can't believe how bad the Pelicans were. They had so many good players. It just never worked. But yeah, it's. I think malleability is really, really important. Unless you're Luka Doncic, and even then, he gets criticized. Like, look at Trae Young, for example. I think is on the level of rigidity to dynamism in terms of how you can change your role, not from game to game, but from possession to possession. Trae Young is at the absolute furthest limit there of inability. And we just saw a team want to get rid of that. Every other team in the league but one say, nah, we're good for basically nothing. Less than Brandon Ingram cost the Raptors. Luka Doncic was also traded. Like, these Helio guys just aren't what the league is looking for. And I do really wonder how, like, if Brandon Ingram, like you said, would be able to flex into that type of difference. Now, I think he's going to give you what you need like, he's going to play well regardless. But, RJ punching up and like helping no matter who he's playing with and not changing style, just fitting in, that's not to be taken for granted.
I think on top of that too, the fallacy of writing RJ off as a player is the same process that would make you do it to Brandon Ingram. Yeah. Is that guys who do hard things, just because it doesn't, you wonder about like, well, it could be easier and the correlative numbers aren't strong enough and all this kind of stuff. It's still really important to do hard things. And
someone has to.
Someone has to. And the ease of which the Raptors get into some of their looks, this is a playoff team. Brandon Ingram, that's really where we're going to see it. That resiliency that he has as a shot maker, and to elevate when there aren't lanes available. And like, as good as RJ has been with his counter to the floater, he's shooting like 42% on those this season. It's not the same as, Ingram shooting 49% on his midi pull-ups. That matters. And Ingram is doing this over the most difficult defender on the floor in all this kind of stuff, right? It's just Ingram doing the hardest things on the floor while being guarded by the best defender, even though you can look at RJ's numbers and say, like, this guy is equivalent or better because, efficiency. And the NBA has gotten so contextual and nuanced in the roles that players occupy. It's not 2008. It isn't like right down the middle, easy to see. Like, star players from team to team occupy so many different roles. And I think you can't lose the forest for the trees with Brandon, despite, like, you have to admit, yes, he's come to the Raptors. His shot diet has not changed as much as some people would want. He's like very fade dependent. His assist to turnover ratio for his volume is like very bad across the league, but he's a guy who's hitting shots, eating volume, and helping move the Raptors along. And also, Rowe, true point guard, said BI's defense has been trending up as well. He helps them shrink the floor. He helps them rebound, and he has the highest block percentage of his career. That stuff is important too.
That game-saving block from Scotty was only there because BI had his own game-saving block, baby. Mm-hmm. A really interesting question, I thought, from Phoenix Play about if you have to trade one for Trey Murphy. I think the Raptors would really miss either one. I don't think it's like, okay, we're talking about who's better, but if you take either away, the team misses so much because they're both very unique on the team. And one thing I think that's really interesting, if you look at the numbers with both on the floor, they're about neutral. Their defense is poor. Their offense is fantastic. But if you take them both off the floor, their defense is very good. Their offense is miserable. They're still neutral. And then they're positive with either of them without the other, much more positive with RJ. I think if you take RJ out and add a shooter, you miss all that driving. If you take BI out and add a shooter, there's so much you're missing from his offense. Like, look at the offense last year, which actually is something that I think I want to. We're just never going to say who's better. That's not something we're
gonna like to Mel's comment saying not sure what the argument is. You need both. Period. That's not. We're not discussing it in that sense. Like, yes, the impetus for this conversation, but we're just discussing how they change and how they feed off each other and how they affect the team, because they do play very differently and they have very different effects on what the team does when they're playing out there.
But no, my question there was, did last night the Raptors play without Ingram, without Scotty, and they score 117 against the Celtics? They have a better half-court offense than the Celtics in that game. I think it was actually transition defense that lost them the game. Does that it's one game, obviously, but did what you saw change your mind at all about where offense can come from, or was it just shot making?
It was just shot making. I felt like, especially the Raptors just won a game against the Hornets where they had their third worst 3-point percentage of the whole season, and they won that game because of their ability to clamp down. I mean, RJ, what a job helping them win that game quickly. What a shot at the end. But they just shot way better in the game against the Celtics. Like, you look at the shots there, like Jamal Shead just banging a couple 26-foot threes, and he's been good above the break. I've really liked this, but it's not always going to come out that way. Jakob Poeltl hitting all of it. In the last game, hitting none of it. It was literally the ball going out to three-point shooters, and clearly before the game, Darko was like, hey, listen, we don't have Scotty out there. We don't have Brandon out there. We have to get shots up and we have to hit them. And they actually happened to hit them and hung in. There's actually a really interesting question from ND. Says, from your eye test, why do you think Scotty and Ingram minutes struggle so much versus when they are away from each other? Do you have a swipe at that? What you think?
I'll let you take this one first. Guess.
Okay. Yes. Sorry. I think the big thing is, and this is what we've been talking about, is Brandon. His talent has helped the Raptors so much, but he has not bought into their style. A Brandon Ingram possession on the Raptors is quite a bit different than a lot of other players. He's plays off of screens as often as Steph Curry and Lauri Markkanen. That's Brandon Ingram's job right now, is like, we're going to make sure that you go out there and you get the ball and you get a touch and we work from there. RJ, very few plays are called for him. And so Scotty playing with RJ is like, oh, okay, this guy will just work to make whatever you're doing work, and you'll do that. But like Ingram, what are the types of shots he creates for teammates? Catch and shoot 3-pointers. Also his mid-range stuff is they're trying to use Scotty as a spacer. They're trying to figure out how to use him. They're not sure exactly how to do that. And Mr. Cahulan says, wasn't Kawhi's offense kind of like that when he played with us? Yes and no. Kawhi was far, 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 far more efficient for the era than Brandon Ingram is now. And also Kawhi's pick and roll ball handling was like way better. Kawhi and Ingram, they both shot a lot of mid-range jumpers. Brandon Ingram being 10th percentile in being able to get to the rim on drives and being a guy who rarely ever touches the paint. That is a huge difference between Kawhi and Brandon. Yeah.
Better shooters around one versus the other two. Yeah, the other thing, I totally agree with you. There was a comment I like. They both like to float a little bit. You can't have too many guys float. I don't have the numbers here. I think only Second Spectrum would. But I imagine Scotty's screener role, he probably sets way more screens with Ingram off versus him on. And I think his role changes when Ingram is there. When Ingram's there, it often is the Ingram offense. And when Scotty's there without him, he gets to play a little more in the middle of the floor. He gets to create for others. Your point about RJ, very well taken. Offense with Ingram and Scotty without RJ Barrett, 113 offensive rating. With all three, 119. 6-point gap. I mean, like, it certainly can work. Yeah, sets screens. He slips a lot of screens, but he gets the ball in the middle of the floor. That's what matters. It certainly can work, the duo between them. I'd like to see more shooting around them as well, but just putting Scotty and Brandon together, it's not like that duo is going to lift any group around them. You really need to be intentional about the lineup you're playing. Around the group.
What I wanted to ask you is, you remember when you grabbed the numbers about Scotty's scoring with Sandro on and off the floor?
Yeah.
Can you go get that for Scotty and Brandon? And again, all this to say, Brandon is, an incredibly important and large figure on this team. So we're just wondering like how he affects different things. But right now I'm looking, Synergy says that, actually these are really Scotty 1.38 points per chance on like a pick a game with RJ Barrett. Those are huge numbers. And we'll see what it is with Brandon Ingram. It's the roles. He sets like half a pick per game for Brandon Ingram. He shoots 7% of the time. Brandon Ingram basically will never pass to Scotty on the roll because they're probably mismatch hunting or trying to get Brandon a shot. So they don't really operate as a two-man action right now. They kind of operate as a screener trying to loose an on-ball threat, whereas I think there's far more harmony between RJ and Scotty right now in that screening role.
Yeah. Couple answers to your question. With Brandon Ingram on, Scotty scores about 24.7 points per 100 possessions. With this off, it goes up to 32. His assists go down by about 2 assist points per 100 possessions, so about 1 assist. And also his at-rim shot frequency with Brandon Ingram, 34.7, without 38.2, so a lot less at the rim. It all points to exactly what we were surmising.
Yep. On top of that, too, we can give some of the cannon fodder stuff. So the big, I'll give the numbers afterwards, but I'll say this. So RJ motivates very good things in general for the Raptors offense. They play more often in transition. They take more shots at the rim. They win a bunch of minutes. They're very efficient. He's very efficient scoring in the half court and in transition. With Ingram on the court, the Raptors, they take a little bit of a step back in transition frequency. They go from number 1 to number 2. So still playing a lot. Ingram takes half as many shots. He's half as likely to take a shot in transition as RJ. That's he's I think 15th percentile in the NBA in how often he does versus 91st for RJ. It's just like one guy is taking a bunch of easy shots, one guy isn't. Brandon, I do wonder what it would look like if he was the guy who got to run the floor. I don't know what the conversations are between he and the coaching staff, but I mean, he's long as hell. He finishes well at the rim. What does it look like when he runs the floor and finishes? But he's always behind the play. He's always trailing. That could be on purpose by the coaching staff because they want him there in case they have to reset. And he's also a shooting threat. Or it also could be like Brandon Ingram has never been a guy who wants to like sprint out in transition. It could be one or the other.
Or he is one of the team's best defensive rebounders and they don't have a big and they need him. I think we'll find out when Poeltl's playing. I think Ingram right now, his defensive rebounding has been really impressive, especially
great
in a pile, like that contested stuff, because like if you hit him low, it doesn't matter. He can high point the ball without jumping in a way that no one else on the team but Scotty Barnes can. It's really impressive. Not even CMB. CMB is like an insane rebounder, but he's got to jump to get the ball. You've seen early in the year, especially when he tried to one-hand it, he just wasn't coming up with those balls. Ingram is, and I think it's just more important to them because we saw what kind of team they were when they weren't cleaning the defensive glass. And I'm hoping that when they have other guys to do that, you can watch Ingram get out in transition. We'll see.
I will. So Ingram's defensive rebound percentage is 17%. So that means he's grabbing 17% of all available defensive rebounds. RJ's is 15.7. So they are fairly close on that. And also Scotty grabs more defensive rebounds and he still has decent volume in transition. So I do wonder, like, obviously they tell Brandon, like, you got to be back. You need to help. But also I wonder, like, if one, he could run more, or if they're like, no, we need you back in case we reset. There's so much, like, basketball is extremely nuanced. It's tough to say what a coaching decision is, what a player's decision is, what makes everything go. And like, you hear a coach talk about an adjustment they made. It could be about something completely innocuous, seemingly, to the viewers. Like, we didn't like this. You'd be like, that's what it was? Are you crazy? It blows my mind.
I have a counter statistic for you.
Let's go.
Contested defensive rebounds. Ingram's actually top on the team outside of Poeltl.
Oh, my king.
His contested defensive rebound percentage is 31.3. Oh, sorry, that's below actually Poeltl and Murray Boyles. And this is just defensive. But in terms of contested defensive rebounds, he's 1.7 per game, just behind Poeltl, tied with Barnes. RJ's 0.9, CMB 0.8.
Double.
It's way down.
Good counter.
Rebounding chances is also only behind Barnes and Poeltl. Defensive rebound chance percentage, like how many gets a shot on, he's first on the team. It's like, I think his defensive rebounding is a lot more than just the raw numbers show.
Yeah. And in summation for these numbers, I'll say, so the big thing is that when RJ's on the floor, the Raptors, they play more in transition, they take more shots at the rim, and that's how RJ changes the team. When Ingram's on the floor, they take more mid-ranges and they play a little bit less in transition, and that's meaningful. But it also, like, I don't look at Brandon Ingram and say, you know, like, why isn't he doing this? Why isn't he doing that? Because I see what the offense, the Raptors run for him. Like, he doesn't play in flow very often. I think and I don't know what the conversations are between Brandon and the coaching staff, but Brandon is a guy who, like, we know, or we should know, what are his numbers right now? Like, this is a guy who can be far more efficient, has shown he can be more efficient, and is in an offense that is using him as a significant crutch for off-screen shooting. And I do wonder, like, how important is that to the health of the Raptors offense? Is it necessary to use him off screens as often as Steph Curry and Lauri Markkanen? Or is this, like, unimaginative? And should this guy be playing in motion? Should it be 21.8 points and 3.86 assists with 2.8 turnovers on, what is his true shooting? 50.567 true shooting? Or should this be a guy who plays in an offense who's utilizing him, letting him catch on the move, getting him more attempts at the rim, getting that three-point attempt rate a little higher, letting him finish in transition more often? And should we be seeing, and maybe a little bit more clear guidelines on playmaking, and should we be seeing this stuff soar? That's what I wonder about with Brandon, is because he said he came here and he wanted to play like an all-star. The Raptors said they wanted to change some of what he does. He said he wanted to do that. And he's playing on the 4 seed right now, and his votes are not so bad, but I don't think he'll get into an all-star game.
I think right now we're looking at RJ probably performing better in the role he's given. Much easier role.
Mm-hmm.
A role that's only available because of what Brandon does. They're both exactly, I think you offer what they're doing to the Raptors before the season starts. Bobby falls to his knees and praises the Lord. They're both performing terrifically. I think comparing them, not only is it apples and oranges, it's also apples that can only exist because oranges. You know, there's an element of the Heisenberg principle in that or the uncertainty principle, where you can't actually measure precisely subatomic particles because the act of looking at them changes their momentum. So measurement's impossible. It's the same thing in a way, where measurement comparison between two players who only exist the way they do because of the other is equally uncertain. Samson, it has been a pleasure having you on my podcast. Yes.
Wait, I have to say one thing. So the cabbage family, I don't know which comes first, but it's called like the cruciferous veggies. They're all from the same like flowering plant. They have broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, turnip, arugula, kale, bok choy, Brussels sprouts.
Where are you going with this?
Only one of those is the genesis, and the other ones don't get to exist without the other, is what I'm saying. There's hierarchy. One of those was the first.
Which one?
I don't know, but one of them is. Is what I'm saying.
Oh, I was on the edge of my seat there. When you said the cabbage family, I was like, is there like an old TV show I'm unaware of? Yeah, the old cabbage family, you know.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining me. Learning from you is always a pleasure. Anything you want to say to people before we get out of here?
Thanks for listening to us and hopping on. I hope that, in this conversation, we are, because so much of our analysis of the Brandon Ingram trade was not that he is going to be a Helio star when he got traded. And I was a pro Brandon Ingram trade guy, and I thought he was going to have a very positive effect on the team. He has. This conversation is to focus on like what each is doing, but largely Brandon Ingram set the hierarchy correctly. And that matters so much. He is the guy at the tippy top of the Raptors offense. And while the efficiency doesn't love him and the on-offs don't love him, his motivation and what he eats up for the Raptors is so important to let other guys assume roles elsewhere. That's my last
just
thing.
Look at the team. Look at how much better they are this year, right? RJ was on the team last year. They weren't winning this many games. You know who else was a fan of the Brandon Ingram trade? The Washington Wizards. It was a trade style from a losing team that you did not see in the NBA before. A number of media members, myself included, reacted with confusion. And the Washington Wizards said, hey, that worked out well for them. We see a distressed asset, had on the cheap, pretty good player, set the role. Let's see what we can do. Thank you all so much for joining us today. This has been a pleasure, as these Saturdays are. The Saturdays I don't get to talk to you come around, I listen to the podcast you do without me with sadness because I miss you. And I miss all of you as well. Thank you for joining us. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and yes, even hype before you get out of here. Whether you got into this in the morning or the afternoon or even at night, I hope you have a blessed day and goodbye.